Hello, everyone. My name is Tess Vanden Bosch. I'm the Projects and Communications Coordinator at BC Farmers Markets, if you've not met me before. Welcome to our webinar today. It's the first of two in a small series on real operating revenue opportunities for farmers markets. So thank you for joining us today. So our agenda, just going to go through a quick introduction, then we're going to talk about the Canadian Emergency Business Account, Regional Relief and Recovery Fund, and the Canada Emergency 10% Wage Subsidy. And then we'll talk about next steps for farmers markets and go through a Q&A. So have those questions ready. Just a quick housekeeping items. All attendees are muted with their camera turned off, so if you want to speak during the question period, you may raise your hand or just let us know through the question or chat box. And then if you're having any technical difficulties or have any questions, again, just use that chat box or the question box. Same with any comments or questions. We are getting those all down, and then we'll make sure to address them during the Q&A period. So again, thank you for joining us for the Real Operating Revenue Opportunities for Farmers Market series. So this is the first one on covering emerging and recovering funding. Today we have joining us Melissa Maltese, who is the Executive Director from Fraser Farmers Market Society. Melissa has worked for BCFM on a few occasions over the years, and most recently as the Farmers Market Nutrition Coupon Program Coordinator for a year. We also have Heather O'Hara, who, if most of you probably know, is the Executive Director at BCFM. We also have Gabrielle, who is the Membership and Communications Manager. She is in the background helping run everything for us. There she is. So I think we'll just get started. I think it's over to Heather.
Okay, great. So, so just a little introduction about, we wanted to get really practical insights for you. That we've thrown a lot of real resources at you guys over the last few months, and on our tool or COVID modification resources page on the website, we still have a lot of these things there. But we thought we'd get really practical and work with Melissa in this case, who's had some success navigating some of these funding sources, as some of you on the phone may have as well. So we thought we'd get really practical, see where there's a fit, and guide our markets towards applying if they feel like this is something they want to do. So we're going to cover off the three big opportunities today: CEBA, the RRRF, and then the 10% wage subsidy. So we're going to start with the CEBA emergency funding, and I'm going to pass it over to Melissa to take it from here.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining in today. I know it's been crazy times for all of us. So we're going to quickly go over the Canadian Emergency Business Account Fund. So it's a great way for you to manage to get a $10,000 forgivable kind of a grant instead of a loan. So as long as you pay back the $30,000, you actually get $10,000 for your market, which is very exciting. So we're going to go over how to apply for that as we have done ourselves. So what is CEBA? So the government at the beginning of COVID launched this initiative in order to help small businesses. So they were offering a $40,000 interest-free loan, which like I mentioned before, $10,000 is forgivable as long as you are able to pay the $30,000 by December 31st, 2022. So it's eligible for nonprofits, for small businesses like vendors, farmers markets, basically anyone that has a business operating account for your bank and your financial institution. Next slide. So who is eligible? Like I mentioned, you need to have a business bank account at a financial institution. So what does that mean? So it's something that is getting all of your financial transactions like market fees that you're paying bills out of maybe payroll. So it's not in somebody's name, it's actually in the name of your society or your business. That's really important. You also have to have a Canada Revenue Agency business number. So that's that GST number that you get that you can put at the end of your invoices, and that's who you remit your GST either quarterly or through the end of the year. And you also have had to have filed taxes either in 2018 or 2019. We hadn't filed our taxes till just recently, so they took our 2018 tax filing. That wasn't a problem, or we just have to keep that as our own record.
So Melissa, just to interject there, is that tax return you're referring to as a society, your T2, your corporate tax return, T2
Yes.
corporate tax return? Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
That's exactly it. So just, you want to make sure that the most important thing before you go ahead and apply for any kind of provision like this is that you have either in your bylaws that you are allowed to borrow money from a financial institution, or you have it where you do a special meeting with your board, you take a vote and your board approves borrowing money. It's a rather substantial sum, and you need to keep that on file in case the government comes back and wants to make sure that you're actually okay with borrowing money and that the whole board has approved it, and it's not just staff that are going out and applying for this loan. So that's the most important part here that you need to do prior to applying. All right, so for us, I guess at the beginning of COVID started, we realized that one of our biggest obstacles would be that prior to the market, we receive quite a bit of our vendor fees in advance. And we knew that that just wasn't going to happen in March. And we realized that we would have this income shortfall, and that would be pretty scary. And we weren't sure when our markets would be opening again due to our municipal agreements. And so our treasurer looked at getting the CEBA loan and realized that we were eligible. So we went ahead and received it. What our goal was with this is that we applied for it, we received it, and then $30,000 of that money would be put into a completely separate liability account that we wouldn't touch. So it would be on our books, it's just sitting there, but it's pretty much ready to be paid back at any point in time by 2022. So the other 10,000 of that is currently basically a cushion in our operating revenue. So luckily, we've been very lucky, and we actually haven't had to dip into that just yet, but it just sits there. It's ready to pay for payroll. It's ready to pay for anything that comes up. If our van breaks down or anything, we have this really nice cushion that we're able to have and keep in revenue going forward. The only issue that we are having now, because there isn't actually information on this yet, and we're looking at getting this information sorted, is to whether we can account this as revenue for 2020, or if it has to only be accounted as revenue in our tax year once we have paid back the $30,000 and that it is now forgiven and given as revenue. So there's still a few little questions. I feel like the government was out there just trying to help us as much as possible, and now they're pulling back and just giving a little bit more detail as to how to record for these expenses and how to submit them to accounting at the year end. So just to be mindful of that there's more information coming forward, and that you just want to keep on top of that if you apply for this very, very simple loan. Speaking of, so the first thing you want to do is apply through your financial institution. So you generally don't even need to speak to somebody. You'll just find it on your online banking platform if you do online banking. And I very much hope that in this time you have gone into your financial institution and set that up. For us, it just took the signing officers to get on, and we're all signing officers. There's 4 of us, so we were able to do financial banking online, which has been really great. So you just sign into your online banking, and then we'll just walk through the steps a little bit quickly, and I'll just point out the key factors here. Once you've signed in, next slide. You should find it, this is with Fan City, so you'll find it under Account Services, just on the left-hand side. It actually says Canada Emergency Business Account, CEBA. It is a little confusing because it doesn't say loan, but it just says account. So then you just type in, there's 4 pages of things that you type in, very, very short, just your business details with how it appears on your tax documents. And then next you would do your contact information. So that can be you. Generally, it should be a signing officer that does this. It's just easier that way. So you just fill in your contact information. And then the next step, apply for the funding. I would suggest that you apply for $40,000 right off the bat, even if you're not going to use it, because the more you apply for, the more the 25% is forgivable. So it just makes sense. So you put in the account number that you want it deposited in and just fill in the rest of these eligibility requirements. And that is literally it. It took me 5 minutes to fill it in, and I submitted the application, and then 5 business days later, so I did it on a Monday, and then on a Friday, we had $40,000 in our bank account. The following week, our treasurer opened up a separate bank account to put $30,000 into. I mean, you could even earn interest in that if you were interested. I don't know how much you would earn, but it was fairly simple to apply for. Right now, they're saying that there's a 15-day wait before you'll be able to receive the funding. So this was the beginning.
Melissa, I just had a question on that CEBA details and attestation slide right now, where it says my employment income is equal to or exceeds 20,000, or my employment income is below 20,000. Can you talk about what do they mean by employment income?
For that, it was just from your T4 over your T2, your T4 summary of last year's, how much your employees made as a whole total. So they just want to see how big your company is. And so we were over, so we exceeded that. So they're just generally trying to get a feel for what size your business is going.
Okay, so basically that's payroll costs to your farmers market, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And would that include independent contractors or only actual employee?
I think that's we only included employees.
Okay, because it's different according to CRA. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. And then that was it. That was literally CEBA. So I'm really hoping that everyone does apply. And if you have questions about it, we'll do a Q&A at the end. So that was the Canada Emergency Business Account loan. Okay, so this one is basically the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund is a very similar loan to CEBA. It's actually distributed by the government for regional relief. So if you're in an area that isn't covered by Metro Vancouver, if you have a close relationship with your Community Futures Credit branch, so they're there to basically assist in a rural area businesses to provide economic development within their community. So it's just a really good time to become partners with these guys and get to know them. There's a representative, and I'll show you a little bit later on where you can see where your representative is and if you actually have one in your area. So if for some reason you've gone through the CEBA loan application and you get denied for whatever reason, you can then apply for the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund if you are in an area that has a Community Future Stream location to you. So you can only apply for this one if you're not in the bigger Metro Vancouver area.
Could you go to the next slide, you guys? Because I know this is a lot of content on the next one. Yeah.
So again, they're supporting rural businesses and social enterprises. So that's a key to keep in mind, is that on their website itself, it actually states that not-for-profits are not eligible. And there is more information about that if you speak to your representative. It's basically because generally non-for-profits don't have it in their bylaws that they can borrow a large sum of money from a credit union or a financial institution. This can be overruled simply by having that meeting that we talked about earlier, going through your board and getting that vote saying that yes, we will be applying for the RRRF. You will need to keep these as a supporting documentation once you apply for this loan, because they're going to want to see that. They get a business analyst, and each one is done by case. So you'll also want to state your case that not only are you a not-for-profit, but farmers markets also are social enterprises, which I think we have a slide about that.
Let's go to the next slides, Kate, because we're falling behind on the slides right now.
Social enterprise. So basically, if you're providing a good or a service that is good for the community, you qualify as a social enterprise. So it takes a little bit of twisting your view on how we operate. So we're not just a non-for-profit, we're out there in the community. We're providing a platform and an incubator for small businesses to grow and sell in the community. So we definitely fall under the social enterprise, and it's just, you'll want to think about that and write a paragraph about it, because you're going to need that later on in your application of how you fit into that social enterprise category.
Maybe you can go to that 2 slides down, Tess. That's kind of like a definition, but right just before this one, general loan details. Okay, I thought I had a slide in there about the how to position yourself or frame yourself as a social enterprise. Maybe it's after this slide.
There's this one here. So yeah, so we look and feel like a traditional, nonprofit, because we're giving so much to the community, but we're actually doing a lot of business. We are huge supporters of economic development in our communities, and that's really how we're not just a community event. And through COVID, this has been a theme the BC AFM has shared over and over and over again. We are an essential service, we are a business incubator, and it's time for us to step out of this community event feel and move forward to really get the products and services out there that can assist us during this time. So what is the CEBA? It's exactly the same as the CEBA loan, the RRRF. It's $40,000 up to $40,000, zero interest till 2022, and 25% is forgivable. So it's like, Oprah, you get $10,000 and you get $10,000. Everybody gets $10,000 if you're able to pay that back, $30,000. So if you can, just set that aside into a bank account and keep the $10,000 as your operating revenue, and try not to dip into the 30 if you can.
Could you speak to the fact that you can't apply for both?
Yeah, I did earlier. So I did say if you were denied the CEBA loan, that's when you would go into the RRRF, as long as you have somebody in your community, one of the offices in your community. Eligibility of so you can't apply for both. And also, if what we're going to go over a little bit later on, if you apply for the wage subsidy, you cannot then use this loan to pay for your staff costs, because they just don't want you to double dip, which makes sense. And that's where, again, the tracking takes place. So you'll want to track what you're using that funding for your expenses. So this is really important. Prior to doing the RRRF application, you'll really want to make sure that the person who's filling it out is an official signing officer. One of the things that you end up having to do is providing your SIN number, which is interesting. So some people may not be comfortable with that, so you need to do that. They prefer to have a passport for photo identification, but a driver's license will do. And then there's an official affidavit at the end. So again, you need that motion from the board, and then basically the person who's filling out that affidavit is representing your organization and is confirming that everything that you've written in this application is above board. So that person is taking on that responsibility of being the key contact for the RRRF, and it's really important that person understands the role that they're playing, because $40,000 is a large sum of money, and you want to make sure that they fully are aware of how they're applying and what they're doing. Okay, the application provides, this is quite a long one in comparison to CEBA, so we're just gonna kind of skim through. So community futures are like a lending service in a lot of rural communities. And if you go onto the community futures website, you will find that it'll have a little place where you can type in your city that you live in. If you go to that slide. Well, you can apply online for the, and it'll see, so you type you type in mission. I use as an example, and then it'll show you the actual community office there, and then you can click on that, and then they'll have their own applied for RRRF funding under that community. And that application actually goes directly to their office because it's them that are going to review it, send it through their business analyst, and then send it up to their board for approval. So that's really important. If you're in Mission and you apply somewhere else in the province, it's not going to work. So you need to apply at your community office. So next one. So you will have to sign up for an account. So you'll do that first. You'll get an email verification. So we can keep moving on that one. And then you'll have to log in. And then the next step is you get this dashboard, and then that's where you can apply online. They only have the one application on there, so it's not very confusing. It's pretty straightforward. So once you hit that, that's when you have to start inputting all of your information. So you've got your organization name, all your contact details. That's pretty standard. And then you move on to the business ownership is a little tricky. It's not mandatory, so you don't have to fill that in because we don't have principal owners of businesses, so you can skip that part. And then what you do need to do is put in your organizational information. So again, you need that business number. You need to put in not-for-profit and your business structure. That one was a little tricky. There wasn't really society under there, so I just put it as corporation. You can go back and talk to somebody.
Melissa, I can speak to that. So there's for-profit and not-for-profit corporations, which are societies, but you would be a not-for-profit corporation. Yeah.
Cool. And then at the end, there isn't not-for-profit to pick what category you're in, so definitely pick social enterprise because that's the closest one to what we would be doing. And then this is where the signing officer would then put in their personal information as well as their SIN number. And then these are the key pieces that you're going to want to basically copy and paste and have ready. So what is your business? This is where you can put in how you fit in that social enterprise stream and what benefits you're having and what your mission statement is and what you're doing for your community to forward economic development while serving the community as well. And then you can also write in how COVID has affected your operations. And then funding request, again, I would say $40,000, head for the top mark if you can, if you're comfortable with that. And then the budget information. So it's really good. You'll have these slides to be able to go through and get all of this information or just get it off of your year-end information that you had last year for your financial statements so that you'll be able to just go in and plop everything in. Otherwise, it's going to be a very long application process. So all your budget information, they want to know all of that stuff. And then this is where if you've received CEBA, you'll have to put it in as well as the wage subsidy. Generally, commercial rent assistance doesn't apply for us. Any other loan program that you've had received possibly, which we didn't have a lot apply for us. So they just want to make sure again that you're not double dipping into the funds. And then your financial information. So so they want to know your revenue and what your impact with COVID has been. So if you have all of this information prepped ahead of time for your signing officer, it's going to make things go a lot easier. And then your operating cost. Again, this is something that can have on your financial statements. If you've got those ready, it's going to be super easy to do. Your bank account information for where you can have that lovely money deposited. Always good. And then this is where you want to make sure that you have all the supporting documents, because if you don't have these, then it's going to delay your getting the funds. So you need to have preferably your financial statements or your banking statements for the past 3 months. So it's pretty easy. You just choose the file, financial statements, choose the files for 2019 and 2018, and you import those. And then the next one is if you don't have those financial statements, so this is the either or. So you've got the bank statements month 1, month 2, and month 3. It's really confusing the way they have it. Bank statements last 3 months, but it's actually like each month they want separately. And so you choose those files and you upload them. And then you can add the rest of those, as well as the passport ID or photo ID like a driver's license if you don't have a passport onto there. Now, there isn't actually anywhere to put your supporting document for your board motion, but at the end, I do say it's good to follow up for your application with your community futures representative, and I would just email that to them right away saying, look, we are approved to borrow money from your credit union, so please submit our application moving forward. And then this is where the authorized official puts in all of their information, so just attesting that everything is true and that you haven't already received funding is very important. And the next one, again, it's a little different than CEBA. And then you have the affidavit just authorizing that all the information in there is correct and that you are a legitimate society. So again, don't forget to follow up right away. This is very much a case-by-case basis application. It's not like CEBA where they're just automatically approving anyone and we'll sort it out later. This is like you need to present your case for how you're going to get this loan. So make sure that you follow up and you build that relationship with the person in your community.
Hey, Melissa, can I go back to the social enterprise piece a little bit? Because there was a slide missing in our presentation this morning. That's what I was looking for when I was sort of going, oh, go to that slide, but it wasn't in there. So the gist of it is we have a slide that's missing out of this PowerPoint that says how to position your farmers market as a social enterprise in your application. So I just want to share that with you verbally. And as Melissa mentioned, so we're nonprofits, we're social enterprising nonprofits. We may not think of ourselves as like that regularly, but in fact, we provide that service. There's a fee for it, i.e. we take in vendor fees. We provide a marketplace for those vendors to sell their goods, and that generates revenue for our markets to sustain ourselves. And we also provide a community mission and benefit, i.e. food security, supporting the local economy, community building, and more. So, you know, that way to position that would be to say your market provides a service for vendors by providing a marketplace which generates revenue to sustain your farmers market operations through vendor fees. And your market provides a community mission and benefit. For example, food security, supporting local economy, community building, and more. So that might be a way to frame that in the application if asked about why you're a social enterprise. There, you could use that if you need to and tweak it for your own purposes.
Yeah, no, that's an absolutely great definition.
Okay.
In fact, we should have all of that in our vision statements for each farmers market moving forward.
Yeah, and it's very important because it, you know, you are generating a lot of your revenues as markets. And it's, I don't know what percentage, but I'll bet you it's quite a lot. Those vendor fees probably make up a lot of your operating budget. So that is really important. It kind of, it opens up new doors for markets thinking of themselves that way as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
All right, moving forward to the last piece of our presentation today, and this is the Canada Emergency 10% Wage Subsidy. It is different than the 75% wage subsidy, obviously, numbers-wise. So for us at the Fraser North Farmers Market Society, we have a payroll program called Rise People, I believe it's called, and it was literally a checkbox that we marked on our payroll, and it automatically deducted 10% through the payroll remittance. So you have to think of it this way. It's not something that you're going to be given money for. It's something that the government isn't charging you this extra 10%. They're letting you keep that money instead. So it allows you to reduce the amount of payroll deductions with your CPP and your EI and your income tax. So you're allowed to keep that money. Now that the period of time has stopped, it was till July the 4th, I believe. We'll go over that in the slide. The reporting structure is a little bit different than what if you would have caught it at the beginning. So this is for who's eligible. Next slide. So you need to have, obviously a nonprofit, but you need to have that GST number again. So that's another key point, but you also need to have a payroll program. So if you're paying not employees, but they're all contractors and they're doing their own tax remittances, this doesn't apply. You actually have to be, as the organization, the people who are deducting the taxes and sending that remittance to the government each month. So that's really important to note. And if you pay salary, wages, bonuses, like you have to not be paying contractors, you have to be paying employees. That's the difference for this one. The subsidy is 10%, and it actually adds up to quite a bit. So it's been really useful for our market for sure. I mean, generally we don't pay enough to make the maximum, so it's lower on the lower end, but it's 10%. Okay, so now that we are past the point with the subsidy, so what you have to do is calculate it manually. So there are resources through the government, and I've put those links in these slides, which will be shared later on. And you can look at it, and then you'll have to have all of your payroll information for the past 3 months so that you are able to submit to the government how much that 10% would have been. And so how they're going to do it later on is that they'll remit it at the end of the year, or they'll apply it to your payment next year. So again, you don't physically get any money, you just don't have to pay as much. That's the difference. So you are still eligible even though the time has passed. Technically it was to June 19th, but now I think they've extended it to beginning of July so that you have that month of June covered, and then the CRA will pay the amount to transfer it to next year's remittance. So it's still really important to apply because that's money back that you'll get at the end of the year so that you don't have to pay as much remittance. So yeah, the eligibility period, again, we've already gone over. So if you didn't reduce them, you can still do it at the end of the year. It's eligible all year, so you're good to go. And then these are the important key things that you'll need. So you'll need the total remuneration paid between March 18th and July 4th. So that's the period. The federal, provincial, territorial income tax that was deducted from that, and the number of eligible employees in that period of time. So that's how you're going to calculate it. It's a little hard to show you here, and I'm disappointed that I couldn't put it in the slide, because you will have to do it as per your own account, and because we have our own payroll system, which is free. So if you ever want a payroll system, Rise people in Vancouver does it for free. And QuickBooks will also do it for you as well. There's a button in QuickBooks Online that can do it too. So I couldn't bring up any examples for you, but there are links that I've shared that are able to help you calculate it. If you have a treasurer that's also an accountant or a bookkeeper, it might be something that you get a little bit of help with, because it will take a little bit of time to go back through the different months to calculate it all at the end. So there are the different links that you can use. So there's some good information if you do use QuickBooks, as well as just information from the government in order to calculate that yourself manually and to get your numbers to submit back to the government. And then you send it off. So for the 10% wage subsidy, like I mentioned before, we have the payroll company. It was super easy. I literally clicked a button and it just automatically took the funding off of our monthly remittance, which we automatically have deposited to our CRA account. That was interesting to know if you're with a credit union, because we have 2 signing officers per check, that we didn't know if we were able to do any automatic deposits for bill payments. But because all we did is have a voided check with 2 signatures on it, and we were able to do that through the payroll company. So there are ways around it. There is also the 75% federal wage subsidy available, which is quite different, obviously, because it's a very large amount. It is a little bit more complicated to walk through, and we've actually hired an accountant for our organization just to get us through it, because there's a lot more reporting and there's differences from last year and this year, as well as our income taxes. And it was just easier to get somebody to take it over because it was beyond my capability as well as our board chair. So if you feel a little overwhelmed by it, it's fine. It's totally normal, and don't feel bad if you need to ask for help, but do it because it's 75% of your employees' wages. Like, our wages are about $6,000 a month. So 75% of that, which we'll get money back, is a huge amount. That's for March, April, May, June, and now actually they're talking about it till December. So like, get on that. That's 100%. You spend $1,000 on an accountant, it's worth it. Take it out of your CEBA loan, spend it, get that money back, because you'll get a huge amount of money back for that one.
Hey, Melissa, do you have to demonstrate the relationship to like COVID, like the impact of COVID in order to qualify?
You do in terms of your revenue. So you have to show those, and that's what's taking a long time, because we have to run a lot of reports in QuickBooks just to show the differences, and you have to have 30% less revenue than you did.
And we're talking specifically about the 75% wage subsidy, not the 10%. The more work, the more information is about the 75% one. Okay.
Yes, exactly. The 10%, they don't ask for anything. They don't want it. You just click the button, or now you have to do it manually.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
No problem. So the next steps for you guys is I would visit those websites. If you apply for CEBA, talk to your financial advisor. That would be the best route for you guys to go through, because it's so much easier. If you can't qualify for CEBA, then definitely go through the RRRF and find your local community futures office and contact them directly. You'll need to set up that board meeting to make sure that you're approved to borrow a large amount of money from the government. That's imperative. And then start gathering all of that information, your business number, the meeting minutes, like how you qualify, and keep records when you get approved for it. Keep records of how you're spending it, which I'm sure everybody does, because we all have to do our accounting at the end of the year. But it's really important, even though it's very much like, here's the money, you definitely want to approve all those expenses at the end of the year and show the government how it's being spent, because people will get audited, and that's inevitable. And if you don't spend that $30,000, put it in a separate account if you can, if you're able to, and just keep that to the side if you can, and then pay it back either. There's no penalty for paying it back before 2022.
And that separate account could be like a savings account that you might use a checking account for all your day-to-day business, but your bank has the ability to give you separate accounts within the same account number, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Or put it into a GIC or something.
Yeah, that's it. Get some interest off of it. Why not?
90-day GIC.
Yeah.
Provided you know the timing, because then you could really screw yourself if you weren't able to cash out without penalty.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Okay. Right. So
it's a lot of information, I know.
Yeah, but I think you've what I love, Melissa, is you've been successful. Like, you didn't have to go to the RRRF because you were successful with the CEBA loan, and certainly what's nice is you get to give us, like, demystify this a little bit more, make it real for our markets and us at BCFM as well. So it's really great to see how it kind of works on the ground.
And it's also comforting to know that that money is there and that will be okay. And I think that's the most important thing, that even if we don't want to dip into that 30,000, it's there if something happens and payroll is too much or something goes down, like we have that available.
Yeah, exactly. So Tess, I understand there's not been any questions from the participants at this stage, right?
That's right. Yeah. Okay. So I just wanted to remind folks that they can submit a question through the question box if you do have any at all. So if you do have any that you're simmering on, it's on it should be on the right hand side. You click that down and you can type in the box there.
So I mean, I'd love to be able to take, unless we get a question, which we'll answer obviously if it shows up, but if you don't mind, I'd love to take this opportunity. We got like 20 minutes together to ask maybe us about some of the other grants or things you've been working on for operating revenues that we are not covering here, just, for out of interest sake, without going into the sponsorship and the stuff we're going to do in the webinar in August. But if you got any comments about other, I've seen a lot of things come across my desk, like that Red Cross nonprofit grants, those kinds of things. Have you got any experience or comments about some of those other things you've seen?
Yeah, one of the ones that we did apply for was the Vancouver Foundation grant. And that was more so a partnership with the city of Port Coquitlam. They need you to be a partnership as a nonprofit with a municipality a registered municipality in order to apply for this specific funding on helping food insecure communities. So we did apply for a rather large amount. I think it ended up being a grant of like $40,000. Most of it was going to go, I think it was $27,000 to the coupon program, and then $13,000 would be to our operations in Port Coquitlam. They had an overwhelming amount of applications, so unfortunately we did not receive it. Mm-hmm. However, our partner, the city of Port Coquitlam, ended up going to the Port Coquitlam Community Foundation, and they actually received funding for 39 more participants afterwards. Anyway, okay. So community foundations are also a really, really, really good place to go, especially right now, because a lot of them do have surplus funds, and food security is a huge issue, especially for people isolating at home. So on one hand, we weren't successful in getting like operating expenses, but on the other hand, the more coupon money that we can flow through our community is better for our farmers and us and everybody involved.
Yeah, and I think from experience elsewhere, that I know Vancouver Foundation's not only Vancouver, it's actually provincial. But there's a lot of, like you just mentioned, foundations at the community level, Cranbrook Foundation, so I believe there's a Community Foundations of Canada website. That's maybe where you can locate a community foundation in your particular town. Mm-hmm. Or region.
Yeah.
To look like if that's not an area, and it may not be about COVID or this situation today, but just so people are aware of those funders out there.
Yeah.
It's good to know about those things, right? And then I think another question for you, Melissa, was, did you guys ever do anything with the local food infrastructure fund grant stream?
We were looking at it, and it was very much equipment based, and unfortunately we don't have a home necessarily where the equipment could live, because with our food hub that we currently have, we would love to have gotten some freezers or like coolers or anything like that, but we had nowhere to store it. And so we were looking at it, and unfortunately, like the eligibility as a farmer's market, we would be way down the list. As opposed to like a small scale food producer or like anyone else that needs to actually get equipment to better service people in the area. So it just, unfortunately, it didn't really apply to us, just because we generally don't have any place to infrastructure the stuff. Yeah, so it wasn't one we looked at.
If you had like a place to store, like I'm very intrigued with temporary but dedicated infrastructure. What I mean by that is a portable freezer unit, say like a cold bot. A lot of farmers are familiar with cold bots that can be set up at a market for the market season or day, but moved somewhere else off site if needed, like whether a municipality was willing to store it somewhere safely, or a market organizer, backyard or whatever. I'm just making that up. But had that kind of storage for the storage been an option for you, that might have been something you might have been worth pursuing? Or
for sure, absolutely, especially with our needs in terms of doing dry storage and cold storage of goods for the online program that we currently have. It would help us immensely, but we just don't have the space, unfortunately. Yeah. And also the transport of items like that too, when we need to move it, is another issue. Just getting a hand washing station is like, how do we transport it? Like,
yes, yeah, that's fair. I know that one of our markets, I think Duncan applied for that. This is a federal program, by the way. We shared some of that information. I think it's probably somewhere on our website too, local food infrastructure funding. federal government. And I think Duncan was successful in securing money and getting,
cool.
well, they got some cold storage for their
Like
market.
somewhere like Pell River with Julie and her setup there, like that would be perfect because they have like a dedicated awesome space that they could probably use that for, but for us, we just don't have the space. Another one that I've applied for that I'm still working on is I believe it's called the New Ventures program. And it basically is the opportunity to pay half the wages of a student, so someone who's returning to school in the fall, in order for them to do some sort of technical work for the farmers market. So that means like anybody who's running an online store, even with Local Line, you could apply to purchase, to hire a student. You know, let's say you're going to pay them $4,000, they'll pay $2,000. The only issue with that is that you have to be able to provide them training. So you have to either like show what their growth will be over the course of their employment. So it's a little tricky, and that's kind of where I'm stuck on, but I feel like there's information out there that would be available, even if it's a mentorship program with somebody who has that experience. So, I mean, it's still worth applying.
Yeah, okay. And I know from also listening to our membership over the last few months, we've had a couple, at least one market that's been able to, like COVID kind of catalyzed and ignited the interest, like for them to go and speak to new kinds of people, like community futures offices and all these folks maybe they had talked to before, but one of them has been successful with their regional district. And their regional district has a very focused agricultural strategy for that northern region. I believe it's the Bulkley-Nechako regional district, for example. And that market, I believe, was successful in speaking with that group who's got a mandate for ag and food security to help with their operating revenues this year. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I'm pretty sure it was the Bulkley-Nechako regional district that ponied up some cash to help with their market operations.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, definitely. And
So
there's a lot of initiatives out there surrounding food security. So like I'm on the food security task force in Pitt Meadows, and I'm with, you know, more task forces in Maplewood. It's a really good opportunity right now for executive directors or market managers to start getting into those. Even the agriculture committee in Maple Ridge, like I'm on that one as well. And it's just like a really good, because they all have funding, and like we're there to provide food. So there is ways for us to maybe cover a bit more of our admin costs to offer services.
Yeah, and I think sometimes like the notion of food security for maybe people who are not as immersed in that work is not only about people who are food insecure, but food security for the general population in an area. So in other words, farmers markets are a food security solution because they enable food to be grown, sustain farm food lands, and a place where people can access through purchasing local food. As opposed to people who might be food insecure, we also, markets also, and the coupon program in particular addresses that problem, but it's not only about insecure food insecure people, it's about us as a market providing a solution to food security locally, right?
Well, it's about us as a province realizing that we don't produce enough, and not enough of our food goes to the consumers directly. And I think a lot of municipalities are realizing that right now.
Yeah. Do you think, I mean, certainly we've always recognized how important farmers markets are as business incubators, and incubating and sustaining, not just incubating, but sustaining local businesses, agri-food businesses, artisans as well. I wonder if in this time with COVID too, like a lot of credit unions, I believe, have stepped up where markets have approached and asked them for sponsorship, and we'll get into that in August, but they've been really successful because those credit unions and financial people know that those small businesses are also need this market to exist for their own business viability, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, what's really interesting right now is that Van City's Enviro Fund, they're actually looking for organizations or businesses that are looking at ways of minimalizing like capitalist purchases and like doing more local shopping, waste-free shopping, things that are support. I mean, they've always been into supporting the local economy, but more environmentally focused shopping, which
Yeah.
is really purchasing habits, which
Yeah.
to me, like, we'll be applying for something, I'm sure, because I was just like, ding, ding, like, this is it. You know, and they've had different features and different streams and focuses in the past, but now they're really recognizing that the demand of their members is to be able to shop hyper local, waste free, something that has a bigger impact than purchasing fruit and veg from California.
Yeah, I know their strategy is lower carbon footprint, so that's
Yes.
where, you know, within the lower carbon footprint strategy of Density, like farmers markets are a solution, and
Yeah.
shopping closer to home and sort of shorter supply chains and all those kinds of things.
So it's time for markets as a whole to really start thinking outside the box and really seeing how not only can we gain more of a foothold in this buy local, shop local movement, but also, you know, assist our vendors into moving that stage from farmers markets to retail to opening up a brick and mortar and just showing the economic development partnerships in the communities and how important they are.
And I mean, Community Futures does play a role as an economic development office. That's like sort of their core, how they would probably label themselves in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But there's other EDOs or economic development offices across the province, both provincial government ones, private ones, municipally based ones. And if, you know, again, just trying to encourage markets to be thinking about themselves, we're many things to many people, and making the case to those kinds of groups to say, hey, EDO office, economic development officer, we matter because we're a place where these small businesses have been able to be more resilient in the face of COVID and beyond. So what can you do for us?
Yeah. I mean, I'm seeing this 2020 as basically a reset year for markets and just being like, really, what does it, at the end of the day, what is our focus and what's really important? And how do we get food to people in the safest manner possible? And so it's been a really interesting pivoting time for everybody. And then there's a lot of hardships, I know, and I read it in our forums, but I think we'll come out quite strong if we get through this.
Well, that's inspiring. I mean, I want to thank the BCFM Ferries who are putting all these links in the chat box.
Yeah, no doubt.
Following the conversation and putting in all these links to these funding programs that we've shared some of them in the past with the membership, obviously, but thanks for that, you guys. So Tess, Gab, and Melissa, do you guys have anything you want to add or ask about or talk about in this last couple minutes?
No, I think what will be good to know is like if people have questions afterwards, because sometimes, especially receiving so much information, sometimes you need to download it all and process it for a bit, and then all of a sudden all the questions will start popping up. So, you know, letting folks know what to do when they have questions and how they can go about that. So I think we could just email us at the info @ and we can field questions from there, and then where we're not able to answer a lot of that, and I learned so much today that I would never have known, we'll loop Melissa in there to sort of help us as the expert who's gone through all of this.
Yeah. Very
I'm
good.
really excited about our next session, especially the sponsorship opportunities, because like rather than seeing it as, oh no, COVID's hit, we have no opportunity to do events or anything like that, all I have been seeing are opportunities to do different things. So I'm really excited to share the information that I'm putting together over the next couple of weeks, and I'll even like tailor like a reusable sponsorship package that people can use within their communities to approach businesses, because now is the time. People do surprisingly have a bit more of that disposable income because they're not going on fancy trips. So hitting up those, you know, real estate agents and so on is like, now's the time to do it.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. That's very inspiring and gonna, you know, be really great for, I'm looking forward to that one too, actually, because you get to get really creative. And I think, you know, in my experience, I've been to the BCFM 4 years this month. It's been a while, but we are many things to many people. And there's not a lot of sectors and not a lot of things out there that are many things to many people. We're tourism, we're food, we're agriculture, we're economic development, we're small business, we're like, you name it. And when you are that, you actually get to speak to more people. And there's so many more people that are interested in what you do and supporting you for the fit, for their reason they're interested in you. Like, it's quite interesting, farmers markets, how we're really well positioned to be many things to many people, which includes funding and investment and, you know, people buying from us for different reasons and going to see us for different reasons, markets, I mean. So yeah, no, it's like kind of like own it, man.
Yeah, totally. And we're valuable. Like, that's, you need to get over the fact that we can ask for money and it's okay and people will pay it. So we're a totally valuable commodity within our communities. So
yes,
and we need to price our value accordingly, because you don't want to, you know, spend or ask for $25 when you should be getting 250. So
well, for sure. And I have kind of a funny story that demonstrates the value of that a little bit. There was a region or a city somewhere in the north who they had hired a giant consulting firm to plan their town and do all the work of like, what are the amenities that would make this town even better and stronger and better, and etc. And at the same time, I believe a market was really having a challenge with the municipality to kind of get their support to continue to exist. And the fancy consultant, came back and said to them, you guys need a farmer's like, that's what your town needs. And it was at the same time this farmers market was battling with the municipality to exist and stay where they were. So I just thought that was just really interesting, because you can't create that community hub that has all this other spin-off economic capacity, blah blah blah. So I just thought, I love that story, because it's you know, it kind of says, oh yeah, we're valuable, markets are really valuable. So
yeah.
So if you haven't signed up already for that webinar, on August 12th, it's the second in the Real Operating Revenue series, covering municipal operating agreements and sponsorship. So the links have been sent out in the biweekly bites, but we'll be sharing them again, as well as in the follow-up email that will get out hopefully by the end of the day, if not tomorrow morning, with the webinar recording. We'll also share some of the links to these other programs that were mentioned, along with the slides for today, with the updates.
awesome. So Melissa, thanks so much for doing this with us.
My pleasure.
Really great. It's just a lot more real when it's somebody who's living the dream. Right?
For sure.
To like hear from you, not like us all the time. So it's great. Thank you very much for your time, and Gab, Tess, for helping organize, as always, keeping us on track.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Bye-bye.
Have a great day.
Bye.